right? And this is what we really need to understand, because what's happening is this trap that's being laid out there. Just tell the people, we know the how, the science gives us the how. You don't need God. We know how thunder happens. We don't need God anymore. We know how the trees grow. We don't need God. This is what they're saying, but the reality is they tell us the how. They can't tell us the why. And if anything, take this analogy. Imagine there's a clock, right? Imagine there's a clock. Imagine there's a clock. Now on this clock, what's on the clock? On the clock face? What is on the clock face? Yes, bro. Hands and what else? Time. Okay, but what shows us the time? What is that? Numbers. Yeah. So a face, a clock face, it has hands and it has numbers, right? Now here's what a scientist does. A scientist comes and he peels this face away. He peels that paper or cardboard or whatever it is, he peels it away, revealing the gears and the mechanics inside the clock. The precisely aligned gears and mechanics. Yeah? The scientist is revealing this. He's telling us the how. Right? He can tell us how these gears line up and what size they are and how they work together. Now, seeing the gears, should this bring us closer to Allah or further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Closer. Because now not only are we seeing the hands and the numbers, but we're seeing the mechanics, the detail, the precision. And when we see this precision, it leads us to appreciate the creative power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more.
Mr. Hussein, can I just ask you something in a very sincere manner? Why is your so-called deity or God such an incompetent designer / creator if he exists? I mean, let us just look objectively at the facts without the dogma goggles. There's the Earth, this tiny planet with very barely any of its surface scarcely habitable, to the extent that mankind and much of the other life on Earth could go extinct within several generations. Then compare this to the vastness of space, over 300 billion stars to the Milky Way, each with their own planets, and over 100 billion galaxies to the known universe. We are but a spore of mould scraping a living in the crack of a sterile universe hostile to life. If this were a kid's science project, they'd get an F for productivity of design. Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Essence of Forte, continuing my video response to Imran Hussein's lecture, The Illusion of Atheism. So with that said, let us continue.
So this is the thing, brothers and sisters. Realize the difference between the how and the why. They may not teach you this at school. See, when Dawkins was asked about should we study the philosophy of science or what science is, he said don't do it, just do the science. This is one of the reasons why. They're trying to mask the reality. This is the agenda. They're trying to mask this reality. Particular individuals at least.
And here I was thinking that you and the rest of the London Dawah movement were lying so blatantly about philosophy in the earlier videos I've responded to. Boy, with all this projection, you could create the world's largest cinema screen.
But we need to understand this. And we need to transcend this. And once we understand this basic thing, inshallah, this does another profound thing. This does another profound thing. Now that we understand the difference between the how and the why, we can appreciate the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again. We can appreciate the signs of Allah again. See, the sad thing is, when we look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He do? How often does Allah try to prove His existence in the Quran? How often? How often does Allah say that, look, here's the logical, philosophical reasons I exist, believe in me? Allah doesn't do this in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never does this in the Quran.
You have no idea how tempting it is for me just to turn this off here. Just to end there and say that Imran realised the irony of this statement and walked away from Islam. You really do not. However, do carry on.
What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does is He speaks about His signs. He tells us about His signs which are all around us. Allah says in the Quran, verily in the creations of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and day, in it are signs for who? For those of understanding, for those who use the intellects. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves. and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that this is the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's not wasting time trying to address atheists. He is telling us, use this, what I've given you, use this and you will see the signs. Look at the world around us.
Well, seeing as you mentioned the sunset and sunrise, it's only fair that we take a look at what the Quran actually says about the process. The start of chapter 18, verse 86. Until when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it setting in a spring of dark mud, and he found it near people. And then it goes on to say that Allah said, go in and either convert them or at least make them good. So, a sign of the Quran, if it were true, would be that the sun sets in a dark mud. Let's just think about that for a second. Oh wait, it doesn't. That's complete and utter bollocks.
And remember the how and the why. And I'm going to share some of these beautiful signs with you just so we can once again start to develop this appreciation for these signs. And really appreciate them for what they are. Because once we understand the how and why, we can really appreciate these beautiful signs.
Well, currently there is only the how, as you have failed to validate even the most basic postulation of a why.
See, one of the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shares with us, one of many signs is found in Surah Nahl, verses 68 and 69. And pay attention to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. He says, and your Lord inspired to the bee. Take for yourselves amongst the mountains, houses, and amongst the trees, in that which they construct. Then eat from all the fruits, and follow the way of your Lord laid down for you. There emerges from their bellies a drink varying in colors, in which there is a healing for people. Indeed, in that is a sign for people who give thought. This is another beautiful thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does, that once He shares a sign with us, sometimes He tells us to use those people with intellects, those people who reflect. He tells us, use this. Now let's look at the bee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the bee. Now the amazing thing about the bee, there's many amazing things. I'll share a few with you. One, for a bee to produce 1 teaspoon of honey, 1 teaspoon, just a small teaspoon of honey, it takes around 5,000 visits to a flower. 5,000 visits for a bee to produce 1 small teaspoon of honey.
Which is about 2.5 days for your average worker bee. Reminder that the bees don't actually eat the honey themselves. They eat the pollen and nectar as they go along. The honey is then given to the larvae of the hive. Great facts also from this. Bees do not eat fruit. They eat the before mentioned nectar and pollen. Wasps eat fruit, but bees typically don't. So yeah, your average worker bees eat the nectar and pollen, the larvae eat the honey, and the queens eat the royal jelly. So Allah doesn't seem to understand how a basic bee operates.
So much trouble that this little insect goes through just to produce 1 teaspoon of honey. Subhanallah. Who inspires it? The bees, they produce so much honey that they don't require this much honey. Who do they produce it for? Who inspires them to produce this much honey? The honey that we drink, the honey that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about, there's healing in it for us. Who inspires them to produce this?
The hive mind. Mindless workers doing orders without questions. I would suggest we call them the Muslim bug, but they actually have some use. Maybe wasps then, as they're just violent arseholes. Also, please remember the fact that yes, bees do eat on the move. The stat you provided is just production of honey for larvae consumption, and then the average beehive contains anywhere from 40,000 to 50,000 individuals. Now, also consider the smaller size in comparison to us, and therefore the much, much lower energy consumption, and there you have it, you've got nothing. As for the excess honey, we as humans have provided favourable accommodation and even offered protection for the bees. The less bees that die from, say, the cold at night or predation at the hive, the less larvae are needed to, be produced to further the next generation. Therefore, yeah, basic answers here, no magic required, and don't even forget the fact that we do selectively breed bees.
Allah, these are signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The construction of the beehive itself. Now I studied engineering, and we studied structural engineering to a degree as well. The amazing thing about the beehive, who knows the shape of the hive? The shape that's used to construct the hive, the bees use. Can someone tell me? Hexagon, hexagonal shape. Does anyone know why? Or not the why, or can anyone know some of the wisdoms behind the shape? Why this shape over any other shape? Symmetrical, but there's a few key points. Number one, that particular shape, say if there's an area, I don't know, say a meter by meter, yeah? A beehive that's a meter by meter. The hexagonal shape that's constructed by the wax of the bees use their wax to construct this shape, this hive. Any other shape would take up too much space with the wax and would leave less space for the honey. The most economical, if you like, shape or structure to use is the hexagonal shape, the structure, in this space. Say if there's a meter by meter of a hexagonal shaped hive and there was a meter and meter by of a triangular shaped hive, yeah? The triangular shaped hive will take up too much space. The wax will take up too much space. But they're so economical, it's the best shape to use. Not only this, structurally, it's the most sound shape. If you look at the strength to weight ratio of this particular shape, it's the most sound, it's the most strong, it's the strongest shape to use.
All either of these two things prove is that bees that build a stronger honeycomb with more storage space are more likely to survive. Now, this is the point where God gets rammed in without any reasoning at all.
Who tells the bee this? The bee is no bigger than the tip of our fingers. It's no bigger than the tip of our fingers. If a human being, we took centuries coming up, and so when we look at structural engineering, we took centuries to come up with the best shapes to use in construction. That are the lightest but the strongest. But who inspired this bee that's smaller than our fingertip? Allah. Allah did.
Your personal incredulity ceased to amuse me a very long time ago. Bees have biological impulses. They also took a very early social route, which has led to them requiring the need to construct shelter, because they can't always rely on the environment providing, unlike our much more varied evolutionary lineage. We have a different evolutionary path, and that is why we lack the impulse to build hexagons.
Not only this, if we look further, the hive itself, it's not straight. You know, the hexagonal shape doesn't go straight through. It's tilted. It's slightly tilted so the honey doesn't run back out of the hive. SubhanAllah, sign after sign after sign, just from the bee. And this is the thing, when we read the Quran, we shouldn't just superficially read the verses. May Allah allow us all to do this, to ponder upon the Quran more. Because when we read each verse, we need to study these verses, ponder over them, reflect over them, because when we do, it truly allows us to appreciate the creative power of Allah.
As well as how He doesn't even know what the average bee eats, which is a fact that most 12-year-olds can tell you.
It allows us to submit to Allah even more. When we see these beautiful miracles that surround us. Let's look at another one. I'll share another one with you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again in Surah Nahl, verse 4, He says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He created, and I'm paraphrasing the words, He created mankind from a drop of semen, a drop of fluid. And this very human being instantaneously stands in front of Allah as a contender. Instantaneously stands in front of Allah as an adversary. And this is such a beautiful verse because not only does it give us a sign, but it gives us a means to appreciate that sign as well. And it also addresses these people, certain atheists, who have maintained or reached this arrogant position, I don't need God, what's God done for me, right?
No, our statement is that there is currently no sufficient evidence for God, and your half-assed attempts at retrofitting don't fit the bill.
But look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. He reminds us of our origins first. Where did we come from? A drop of dirty mixed fluid. Think about this. See this bottle. See, if it condenses in a little while because of the heat, there's some droplets in the top of the bottle. You are nothing more than a drop. Nothing more than a drop. About 20, 30, maybe 40 years ago, every single one of us here was no more than a drop of liquid. Think about this for a second.
Imran, you do a lot of talking about the bees, but I think it's time that we also included the birds. You see, when a man and a woman love each other very much, they copulate. Now, the man's semen is very much a visible and observable fact. Thus this revelation is no more a sign from Allah than me going, "Bears do indeed crap in the woods, my dear fellow." Now, to end this anecdotal story about the man and the woman, they were both stoned to death for adultery. You see, you keep making shit up, I'm going to keep taking shots. The only type of shots I like, pop shots.
And now so many years later, you're sitting here, a fully functioning human being who has the ability to think, who has the ability to ponder, who has the ability to reflect, who has the ability to understand, who has the ability to talk and communicate, to feel happy, to feel sad, to feel sorry, to empathize, to do all of these things.
And yet, after all of this evolving and all the disasters which has led to the extinction of 99.9% of all species that have ever existed on this planet, leaving you as the pinnacle of the food chain, you just throw it all away and bow down to some magical sky wizard without a moment's questioning and simply lie for a living. You evolve, man. Start acting like you are the advanced species you apparently are.
Who brought us to this place? How did we get to this place? From a drop of water, dead drop of water, to a fully functioning human being. All you need is time, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. How does that happen?
Imran, I was kind of joking when I said that you were the result of an accident in the previous video. However, if your father's sperm is lifeless, aka sterile, there's something I think you need to know. You see, your normal healthy sperm is teeming with life, being the result of meiosis in the testes. If your father was sterile and therefore, well, you just couldn't come from him, simply. I'll let you figure out the rest.
SubhanAllah, when we ponder upon this, how can science, again, think about this, the how and the why. Let's apply it here.
Forget the how, forget the why, you need to learn the what. Sperm is not normally lifeless. It metabolizes in a biological fashion and uses that metabolism to move about its environment. I don't know if this is a result of Islamic sex education, but really you have some issues.
How? Fine. Science can tell us some of the how. Right? How a drop of fluid turns into a fully functioning human being. Can the science tell us the why? Can't tell us the why. Now, does that mean because it can't tell us the why, there's no why? Of course not. Of course not. To claim that there's no why and we're just here by chance, we're just the product of this blind, random process, just stardust, that's just happened to go through this blind and unconscious process, and we've ended up as fully functioning human beings that are conscious. To claim that this happened like this is crazy.
We both know that your lack of understanding doesn't come from not having access to the largest collections of information, but rather your own willful ignorance. You want to throw in buzzwords like chance and random out there. You've come over cosmology, abiogenesis, evolution, the reproduction cycle, and frankly, I don't have the time to go through each one and reiterate what has already been said 100 times to you already. Just know that you only impress the fellow deluded when you can't even grasp the basic concepts that your 12-year-old can normally grasp.
So hopefully by now you're starting to see some of the flaws of claiming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not exist. To even think that Allah doesn't exist renders us silly, renders us fools. And this is what Allah tells us. They say, should we believe as the fools believe? They are the fools, but they don't know it. And they're trying to delude us with the lies that they're believing. SubhanAllah.
People of the internet, I give you the Dunning-Kruger effect at its most terrible, yet somehow most gobsmacking.
This is profound. And another amazing thing about this verse, another beautiful thing about this verse is understand the arrogance. You know, sometimes when we're giving da'wah, when we're speaking to people, or someone reaches the level of a professor or a PhD, and the individuals like Richard Dawkins, they're very arrogant. They have this arrogance about them. right? And they say, I don't need God. What's God done for me? We know how things work. But this verse, what does it tell us? Look at your origins, mate. Look at where you came from. You were a drop of liquid. And now you're standing in this position. You think you know everything. You don't know anything. You didn't bring yourself here. You didn't create yourself. So humble yourself. Because this arrogance is doing nothing but destroying you. SubhanAllah, and it allows us to appreciate this. Once we understand this, it humbles us. Once we humble ourselves, then again, another means to turn back to these verses and understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. Understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sharing with us.
So you are going to say that the people who are more literate in their fields than you are, having actually taken time to research said fields, yet still understand that there are gaps in our knowledge, and fully recognise that, are arrogant. Yet you, after having read a single book so poorly that either you do not understand what it says, or have read it so well that you know what it says is so terrible that you have to lie, and yet you claim that you have all the answers to the major questions of the universe. At this rate, the flat surface that you will need for your projection will be larger than the moon.
So hopefully, inshallah, that sort of clarifies the thing. And another point I want to make is that a statement that Numan Ali Khan, I heard him say recently on one of his lectures, he said that our dawah in the 21st century these days is free of the Quran. We don't use the Quran in the dawah. We use philosophical, logical argumentations, and that's it. I was guilty of this myself, initially when I first started.
No, you never resorted to logic. Had you done so, you would have lost your faith so rapidly, it would have been funny.
All we're worried about is meeting them on their level, which is important. We need to understand the tools that they use. They use philosophy to understand these things, but realize that their cut-off point is this philosophy, is their minds. They don't believe in anything higher, and they're limiting themselves. We have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the ultimate source of knowledge.
Oh yes, we are limiting ourselves by ensuring that we don't run around accepting every single thing a person states and asserts as absolute truth. Only in Islam are questions so apparently evil, and only in Islam is evidence so apparently arrogant.
Right? This is what we need to understand. We need to turn back to the Quran. We need to use the Quran. We don't use it. We use logical, rational argumentations. Fine. You'll make someone believe in a God. Defeats the purpose. They'll say, okay, I believe in God. I'm going to live my life as I want to live. I don't need to do anything special. I'll carry on drinking. I'll carry on partying. I'll carry on fornicating. And I'll carry on doing all of these things. I believe in God. That's not what Islam is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us the best way. We need revelation. Human beings are in the need of revelation, and we need to communicate this revelation in our dawah. Share these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with them. Share them because they're profound and they appeal to the fitrah. They appeal to the aql, that we understand these things and we can appreciate these things.
Well, if you are anything to go by, then Islam is doomed, and thank every science literate individual out there for helping this process. So yes, that is the end of the video. I cannot do any more today. I just can't put up with this. So yes, I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you'd like to support my work, then please check out my Patreon. Don't forget to click like, comment, subscribe, and share on Facebook and Twitter. It really does help when you share this video over social media. It does send me more traffic and does keep things going. Also, if you want to check out my Facebook and Twitter, feel free to do so. I post updates now and then. So yeah, this is Lessons Thought, hoping you're all doing well. Take care and out.